and a baby. And this baby was crying as if it was a nuclear-powered speaker, and he came closer to me, and immediately everybody stopped looking at that woman and the baby and just turned their head slowly and looked at me. And everybody on that plane was thinking the same thing, you smug little man. She comes to sit to me and she says, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God, here's this woman and her woofer and tweeter, oh my gosh. And she sits down next to me, and immediately I thought, this is gonna be the worst flight of my life. But that was me surrendering to circumstance, not owning the most important decision we all have to make in every minute of our life. Will we accept things as they are, or take responsibility for changing them? And suddenly I had an evolved thought, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna be present in this moment. I'm gonna infuse my truth here, and I'm gonna make this the best flight I can have. And before you knew it, I started talking to the woman, and as soon as I pulled myself out of my drama, I saw that she was embarrassed, that everybody was staring at her, and I tried to make her feel at ease. I started making faces at the baby that paralyzed some of my face muscles, and then we took off, and now we're having a good time. She's relaxed, I'm playing tic-tac-toe with the little boy, and then I proceed to tell him every single joke I had appropriate for a 7th grader. Why did Tigger and Eeyore have their heads in the toilet? Because they were looking for poo. That's why I'm in politics. It was the quickest flight I'd ever taken. I land in California, and we exchange addresses. We say we're gonna keep in touch, but we don't keep in touch. 5 years pass, 10 years pass, 15 years pass, and now I'm in one of the most difficult periods of my life. I was running for mayor, I was in a street fight, and I was discouraged on this particular day, and I opened the mail, and there was this letter saying that, from a woman saying, you may not remember me, but I met you on the first flight I ever had with my kids. I thought it was gonna be horrible, but you made it so good. Your kindness I will never forget. She went on to say that they were in Newark. Her family was in Newark, owned a factory in the city. The little boy I was brutalizing with my jokes was now a young man who became one of my best campaign volunteers. They employed lots of Newarkers and invited me to talk to them, and then they did something that politicians love. They wrote me campaign contributions. This is the truth of who we must be. We must tell this world our truth on our journey. Because it's not about the journey, it's not about where you're going, it's about the now and this moment. And every moment, whatever you encounter is for your good. I tell people always that you should love those who hate you. Or as I say often, let your haters not be your deflators, but your motivators. Let their fire take you higher, and let their lies fuel your rise. I tell people along their journey to make sure in the very moment that you're in, that you take risks, that you take chances. I believe in my heart of hearts that it is better to have your ship sunk at sea than have it rot in the harbor. I tell people on their journey to please make sure in the present moment to take on the more difficult challenges. In life, you don't get everything you pay for, as Frederick Douglass reminds us, but you must pay for everything that you get. I tell people on their journey to make sure in the present moment, in the now, make sure that you live your love because you will not have that moment again. I conclude with another elderly woman. And she happened to be my first person I ever represented as a client. And she embodied that lesson from my parents so well that I'd like to end with her note. You see, I changed some of the facts out of respect for the family, but I met her at a public housing project in New Haven, Connecticut. She was being evicted from her home because she had a 19-year-old nephew that was looking after her because she would fall into seizures and need somebody there, but her 19-year-old nephew was caught with a lot of drugs. And the housing authority had a very draconian law that if one person's caught with drugs in the family, they move to evict everyone. Well, I listened to this and I was upset. I left her little apartment and I ran back to drove back to my legal center and sat with my supervising attorney, and I said, we're gonna fight this injustice. I'm so upset by this. And my supervising attorney looked at me patiently and said, you need to understand something, Cory. You are a lawyer now. You don't represent your own agenda for justice. You represent that woman. And if you force her to fight this, I've seen these cases, you might have a 10 or 15% chance, and if you force her to fight and she loses, you'll go home so upset. But she will not have a home to go to at all. You need to go get her, take her back here, and explain to her her rights, and let her choose for herself. And I did just that. I picked her up, drove her back to the legal center, sat in a conference room, which was for what was one of the longest hours of my life. And all this woman could do was cry during that time. My elder, this woman of dignity, all she could do was cry and say over and over again, why are they doing this to me? I've done nothing wrong. Why are they doing this to me? And then all of a sudden at the end of that hour, something miraculous happened. And I believe in miracles. I really do. Emerson said, that only which we have within can we see without. If we see no angels, it's because we harbor none. And here this woman manifested to me a miracle in a simple question. She curled inside of herself and she stopped me from speaking just by that motion. And she opened her eyes and she said to me, just tell me one thing. And I said, yes. She goes, if I decide to fight this case, will it help other people? And I looked at her and I said, I told you, ma'am, I said, we only have about a 10 or 15% chance of winning a case like this. My supervising attorney has seen them before. But yes, I guess if we win the case, yes, it will help because we'll have a precedent. And before I could go on, she just heard that word yes, and she curled inside of her body again. This woman took her frail fingers and curled them into fists, opened her eyes, looking like a woman of a new spirit, slammed her fists on the table, pushed back, and she stood up. And she looked at me hard and she said, 10 or 15% is enough for me. We will fight. And in that moment, I saw her truth. I saw her heroic hope. I saw her defiant dignity. I saw her love. She was greater than her fears. She was greater than her worries, her doubts. She was greater than her circumstances. She was light. She strode out of that room with a regality in her spirit, and I just watched her go. I turned to my supervising attorney. We just stared at each other for about 5 minutes till I realized I had to give the woman a ride home, so I ran after her and put her in my car. I worked for 3 days and 3 nights on this case. I woke up one day getting ready to go back to the library, and I get a call from my supervising attorney, and they said, Cory, you need to stop for a second. I go, no, come on, I got in a hurry. No, stop. I said, what? And they said, I have some really bad news for you. I go, what? She goes, well, last night your client, your very first client, had a heart attack and died. And I remember slamming down the phone, feeling my eyes fill with tears and rage. I began to want to cuss like a sailor, and then suddenly I realized my arrogance. You see, I thought God had put the great Cory Booker there for my poor client. But there's purpose in everything. God had put this great woman there for the poor me. That at the very beginning of my career, months before my last graduation, she demonstrated to me what fundamentally is the most important force in the universe. The Greeks called it agape, the Hebrews call it chesed. As a poor Baptist from Newark, New Jersey, we just call it love. This to me is the calling that my parents gave me, to be who I am, not the world around me. I wasn't born to fit in. We were all born to stand out. Be who you are. You're not born to accept what is. You're born to infuse your change. And as King said, change will never roll in from the wheels of inevitability. It must be carried in on the backs of authentic spirits of love. This is the calling of my graduations. I tell you, my parents would swirl around me with other family members. And I don't mean to be down for the graduates, but as I stand here 20 years since my last graduation, some of those family members that were there from 8th grade to college, to graduate school, to law school, some of them are not here anymore. My future wife, she'll never get to meet my grandfather. My kids will never get to meet my grandfather, but they will know him. They will know his love. They will know his spirit. Embrace those people today and let them know that you will go out into this world understanding that your very makeup is composed by that conspiracy of love, of which they were a critical part. Go out there and swear to this world your oath, not with your words, but with what you do, not with your hand over your heart, but with your hand outstretched to a world that desperately needs your hand, your help, your insights, your creativity, your honor, your courage. It needs you. And on this idea of an oath, I conclude with what my parents would read me as a boy. Nights before I would go to bed, they would read me stories and poetry, and this one means the most to me. It simply reads this: "Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, but yet must be the land where everyone is free. The poor man, the Indian, the Negro, me. Who made America? Whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must make our mighty dream live again. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, but I swear this oath, America will be. As Langston Hughes has called you, as your families has called you, as this institution has called you, now it is your turn to go unto this world, swearing your oath, telling your truth, living your love, and with that courage, day to day, hour to hour, moment to moment, second to second, with that truth, you will join a chorus of conviction of your peers. With that truth, you will join together, and you may be the generation that makes this nation live up to the promises spoken by our children in classrooms in Newark, that we will be the nation with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.